Hello, and welcome to California Divorce Buddy, a divorce and child custody coach in California, here to help you with all those pressing issues nobody else is talking about. Today, we are talking about a very important piece of self-care and of communication in your divorce or ongoing child custody situation. That topic is boundaries. It's so misunderstood that I need an entire week of social media posts to deal with it, maybe more. How boundaries relate to self-care is pretty self-explanatory, but how does boundaries have anything to do with communication? Well, boundaries and communication are deeply connected because setting healthy boundaries helps clarify expectations and establish mutual respect in relationships. Here's how they tie together. 1, clarity and understanding. Boundaries help you communicate your needs, limits, and expectations clearly. When you openly state what you're comfortable with, it prevents misunderstandings and allows others to understand you better. 2, respect and trust. By setting boundaries, you show respect for yourself, and guess what? Others too. When people know your boundaries, they're more likely to respect them, which builds trust. Good communication is based on trust, so clear boundaries support effective, honest interactions. Number 3, it prevents resentment and conflict. Boundaries help prevent situations where one person feels overextended, taken advantage of, or disrespected. When people are upfront about what they can handle and what they're comfortable with, it minimizes resentment and reduces the chance of misunderstandings and conflict. 4, it promotes healthy relationships. In relationships, boundaries encourage open, honest communication. They set the stage for both parties to feel safe and valued. When each person knows the other's boundaries, they can navigate conversations and interactions in a way that maintains a positive dynamic. And finally, number 5, it empowers assertiveness. When you have clear boundaries, you're better able to communicate assertively. You're more likely to express your thoughts, needs, and feelings directly rather than hinting or avoiding certain topics, which leads to clearer, more effective communication overall. In short, boundaries create a framework for respectful and productive communication, whether in personal or professional relationships. They help ensure that both parties feel heard, valued, and understood. So, what's a boundary anyway? Well, I can tell you that up until a couple of years ago, I didn't have a clue. In fact, a woman that I deeply respect had to pull me aside after I shared about boundaries with another friend to tell me that what I was talking about and practicing had nothing to do with setting a boundary. Yikes. Here's where we go off into a ditch, I think. We think that a boundary is telling another person what we will and will not tolerate in a clear and concise way. Hopefully clear and concise. Then, when they fail to respect our boundaries, they're the ones to blame. We are the victim of the other person's failure to respect our boundaries. The reality is so far from that. The reality is that boundaries have nothing to do with the other person. You heard me right. Boundaries have nothing to do with your soon-to-be ex. They have nothing to do with your child's other parent, even if that person seems to be disrespecting or not adhering to your boundaries. So, if all that's the truth, then what the heck is a boundary? Let me tell you. The first part is exactly what you think. When another person does something that you think is disrespectful or violates your values or your trust, you need to clearly state your boundary. So it might sound something like, I'm uncomfortable with how our communication degrades into name calling. I'm not available for that sort of talk anymore. Or, I believe it's important for Katie to have uninterrupted time with both of us. So I'm setting a boundary that we only reach out to each other during the other parent's time if there's an emergency or a matter directly related to Katie's health and safety. This will help us both make the most of our time. Then, and this is the important part, When the other party violates your boundary, you don't scream, "You're violating my boundaries," and then go tell your therapist that they are violating your boundaries. What you do is the hardest part. You adhere to your own boundaries. So when your soon-to-be ex calls you a name, you remove yourself and from the argument completely. Okay? You change the arrangement that's going on. So I'm hanging up the phone now. I'm not communicating when there's name calling. Then you may send an email or text that says, "From now on, we're going to communicate divorce-related matters exclusively through email or the co-parenting app. I believe this will allow us to have a clear record of all conversations and keep things organized." Or when they decide to repeatedly call during your custodial time, you let their phone call go to voicemail and follow up with a text or app message that asks if their phone call was an emergency or involves Katie's health and safety. A boundary does not rely on the other person. It is 100% your ball game. You set your own boundaries and then you enforce them. Your boundaries have zero to do with anyone but you. See how that works? So go forth. Enjoy the self-care of boundaries and the better communication available when you make and keep your own boundaries. Like and subscribe for more delightful divorce and child custody tips. Next week, we discuss validation. So much fun.